Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're excited to have you here on a beautiful Tuesday, July 23rd, for a very exciting webinar. We'll introduce our very special guests very soon, but I would love for everybody to share in the chat where they're calling in from today. That's probably one of my favorite things during the webinars is seeing people from all across the country and sometimes even outside of Canada. So feel free to share in the chat where you're calling in from today. And we'll just give it a couple minutes. Cape Breton, very nice. And we'll give it a couple minutes for people to filter in, and then we'll get the party started. So we got, let's see here, Cape Breton, Windermere, BC, Calgary, a lot of Alberta, Toronto, hello neighbor, Quebec, Innisfal, Windsor, Yellowknife, Kingston, Prince Edward County. I love that place. Saskatoon, welcome, welcome. Ottawa, it's fantastic. Alton, Thunder Bay, Abbotsford, that's close to Nanaimo. That's in BC too, I think. I'm learning my West Coast geography. Smiths Falls, they had that really great Hershey's factory at one point. Montreal, welcome. We'll give it just another minute, everyone. Thank you for coming in today on for a fantastic webinar. Going to introduce our guests and the webinar topic today very soon. Yeah, welcome. From Nova Scotia. I was just there visiting some of our facilities. Oh my God, it's so beautiful out there. Moncton, New Brunswick. Alliston, very nice. St. John's. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off today. So my name is Jonathan Friedman, and I'm pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on the impact of mental health and addiction on the family system. For those of you who are long-standing attendees of our webinars, welcome back. And for those of you who are new to EHN Canada, we are a leading nationwide network of treatment centers for addiction, trauma, and mental health. We offer inpatient services with centers coast to coast, as well as intensive outpatient and virtual options. For more information about our services, visit our website at ehncanada.com. Everyone is on mute for the duration of the webinar and cameras are turned off, but we'd like you to use the Q&A box to submit your questions for our speaker throughout the session. There will be a Q&A period at the end. And for sometimes the Q&A box does not work, so feel free to share your questions in the comment box as well, and I will be fielding those at the end. We will be sending a follow-up email in the next week that will contain a link to the recording of today's session and your CEU certificate. To stay updated on our future webinars and newsletters, we invite you to opt into our mailing list by filling out the form that has been linked in the Q&A chat. I'm located in Toronto, which is on the traditional territory of several nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. It is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Our speaker, Merlene Sibley, is located in Nanaimo. They are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. If you are new to this work and want to find out whose land you are on or grew up on, please visit www.native-land.ca. Now, time to introduce our guest, Merlene. Merlene Sibley is a family programs counselor at Edgewood Treatment Center in Nanaimo, BC. This role supports, educates, and guides families impacted by mental health and addiction. She has been a part of EHN Edgewood in Nanaimo, BC since July of 2012. Merlene is a social worker and has worked with individuals, children, teens, and families in a variety of settings during her 40-plus year career. Her first contact with Edgewood was as a parent and wife experiencing the devastation of untreated addiction and mental health in her family system. At the suggestion of her therapist at the time, Merlene enrolled and took part in the family program, called Insight at the time, at EHN Edgewood, Nanaimo, BC. Since completing the family program in 2008, she began to explore her own recovery journey. Merlene continues to have an active role in her Al-Anon Fellowship, practices mindful self-compassion and self-care on a daily basis. With lived experience in recovery through Al-Anon and a background in social work, Merlene strives to offer compassion and hope to families. And now, without further ado, fantastic guests, I introduce Merlene.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you very much. I really am so impressed with the amount of people that are here from all over, which is a wonderful thing to see. Jonathan, thank you for that introduction. I have worked at Edgewood since 2012, and what Jonathan talked about was that My background in terms of personally, I grew up in a home that was affected by addiction and mental health and trauma. I have a, in my marriage, my husband struggled with alcoholism. And of course, my son is what brought me to the Edgewood program in 2008. And I'm so grateful for those experiences. It seems funny to say, but part of what I hear from, well, a lot of what I hear from families is they just, they want their loved one to get well, and they don't see anything that often that they need to do. And I can really identify with that, because when I was told by my counselor to come to the family program called Insight in 2008, I was quite horrified. I just wanted to learn about how to get my family members well. And so we talked, my coworker Debbie and I, we work in the program, the family programs here, based out of Edgewood in Nanaimo, BC. But we also connect with all of the centers and just make sure that family members know that we're here to support, we're here to provide information. And so I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. So Jonathan, is that working okay?
Hey, yep, that's looking great on our end. Thanks so much, Marlene.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. It just looks different from what I'm used to. So today, this is about the impact of mental health and addiction on the family. And so today, the learning objectives, what we're looking at is exploring what codependency is, how it influences the treatment journey, review 3 areas in which support networks are needing more assistance, and to discuss the 4 elements of self-care. So when we, Deb and I, when we meet with lots of families, talk to lots of families across the country, and in our webinars that we do on a monthly basis, we try to define what codependence is, and we draw from many of the wonderful experts that have been studying this for many years. And one of the ones that we look at is Candace Platter. And so one of the ways that she describes codependence is that when we're over functioning in someone else's life and under functioning in our own, and it occurs when we put our needs, people's needs ahead of our own on a fairly consistent basis. And it's that fairly consistent basis that's the key. It's one thing in a family to be helping somebody, but when we have a family member that we see struggling with addiction, with mental health, with trauma, it's only natural to want to help. But over time, this pattern develops where, we start taking over, or people start taking over, doing everything for their family member. And so we always talk to families about the best thing that they can do is to learn as much as they can about whatever's going on in their family, to go to webinars, to read about, to go to groups, because the more that we know about what's going on, the better we can respond. But often, you know, so in my experience with my family members and what I hear from different families is that, over time, without even knowing it, our attention is completely off who we are, and we focus everything on the other person. And so just as our family members are obsessed with whatever it is that's going on for them, we create that obsessive nature, and we get into that dance of that codependent relationship. And the whole thing, again, is fairly consistent is the key. It can be also called people pleasing. Virginia Satir has a different stances. And so it's the people pleaser, the placator. And often over time, we worry. And of course, we worry about loved ones. When we watch somebody just, behaving in ways that are destructive to them, that really we feel totally impacted, that we're on that roller coaster together. It's, we worry about upsetting somebody. And so this little cartoon is like, what do you want to do? No, what do you want to do? And back and forth. And many of you may be familiar with that type of interaction. It's so common when we have in that dance, that enmeshment with a family member, is that we want to please. We're really worried about what's going on. We're hyper alert to their needs, and we lose who we are, and we often feel really frozen to make any decisions. And I know in my own life, with my husband, with my son, I was always looking at what do they want, what do they need. I was better at looking at their, what are they feeling, and I lost anything around. I didn't connect with my own feelings. I was always outwardly focused. And so, of course, families desperately want to help their loved ones overcome their destructive behaviors. When a family member is suffering, struggling with mental health, with trauma, with addiction of any sort, whether it's process or otherwise, it's really um, of course we're going to be affected. And so we do try to normalize that for family members. Of course that they would be involved. If your family member was ill with a disease, you would want to be there to help. And often we're desperate to improve the situation. And one of the, Robert Wiseman talks about how family members, unless we're working on what we need to work on, we are not the best support to our loved ones in early recovery, because we're almost ready to do anything. There's that huge fear. If I don't, what we hear from families all the time, if I don't, take care of the rent, if I don't take care of paying bills, if I don't look after the children, it's always about, I'm going to do everything I can to take the stress off this loved one, not realizing that that's not helping. And so we don't always give the right assistance. And so we talk to family members about, what is enabling, what's helping their loved one to get well, to seek recovery, or what are they doing that is actually continuing the addiction. They didn't cause the addiction, but they certainly can support it, because often when we are so caught up, we're emotionally and we're not regulated, we are willing to do anything, and often we don't give assistance in appropriate ways, and we often respond in panic. And we hear that a lot, Deb and I, with family members, that they call and talk about what they are hoping. They think this is a solution. And then with time, they're able to ground themselves and come back to looking at maybe what they automatically would have done isn't what would be helpful. And of course, there's nothing easy about loving someone who's not well. And again, it's that knowledge. The more that we learn about the issue, the more we learn about the impact on us, the better we can understand what's going on. We can start to understand why our loved ones are behaving in the way that they are. We can look at ways, when we're not so much in panic, we can start looking at ways that we can do some changing ourselves. And of course, the key to change is to let go of fear. If it was only that easy. And so that's why we talk to family members about the support that they need throughout. So when, from my own experience and what I hear other people talk about is when we put other people's needs first. I would think that I was being a good person. I grew up with that blueprint. That's not a blaming of my parents. I come from a family where there's generation after generation of different issues. And what I took from the core beliefs of my family was that I needed to be nice, and I equated nice with kind. And so I thought I can no matter what happens, I'm going to do anything anybody wants. I'm going to put somebody first. I'm selfish if I don't, because that's the value in my family. I watched my mother look after different family members, often at the expense of her own health. And so then with recovery and what Jonathan talked about at the beginning, my start to recovery was coming to the family program so many years ago. And it was no matter the fact that I'm a social worker and have worked with families and children throughout my career, I couldn't apply what I knew to my family members. When my heart is attached to the people that I love, I need to get the same amount of help that anybody does. And so my start to that was coming to the family program, and then to start to connect with groups like Al-Anon, Smart Recovery for Families and Friends, and counseling. Because that's the other thing that we really encourage family members to do, is to start connecting. So for me, using the supports around me, I was able to look at, um, I don't say yes because I'm kind. I don't say yes because I'm selfless. I say yes to everything that my family wants, uh, because I'm protecting myself. I don't want to feel the consequences. Um, I don't want anybody disappointed. So those are my core beliefs that I learned in childhood for whatever reason. And that's what I took into my relationships. And we talked to family members about, if we're not able to do that exploration for ourselves, we are not able to do any changing. And so for me, it was painful to do that. It is painful. But, the codependent dynamics insists on me saying yes. And my family came to expect it. And when I would start to say no, of course, those behaviors for my family members increased, because they'd come to expect that I was going to do whatever they asked of me. And so often with families, they forget their power. They're so focused on their loved one. They just want that loved one to get well. We hear so much about family members saying, please fix my family member. I just want the person I love back again. And we start to gently talk about, if you want to go back to where you were, that's what got the person in treatment. That's, it's it's looking at new ways now, because we do need to change. We need to break the dynamic. I teach people how to treat me, and when I engage in people pleasing behaviors, I give permission to be treated poorly. And so that's, such a huge part of helping families start to see that this is a system. Every family is a system. It's like the mobile over the baby's crib. And when there's a tugging on that mobile, as families, we want homeostasis, we want things to be calm. And when that person who's not well starts doing things, it makes everything unbalanced. And so we get into those patterns without even knowing it, where we lose who we are. We are focused on everybody else, and we behave in ways that anybody's wishes, we go ahead, we say yes when we really mean no, and then we're filled with resentment and anger and disappointment. And so when we talk to families, we talk about, as family members, how would we know the difference? And so when we're through the family program, we do the webinar, which is 3 half days. We're on Zoom. That's available for all family members across the country. There's no cost to that as part of treatment. And what we do is my coworker Debbie and I, we are the ones who monitor the webinar. We do some of the presentations, but we also have some of our counselors do presentations. Because again, what we know that for family members, the more knowledge that they have, the better they're able to change, the better they are able to find some hope. Because often families are so done with their loved one. They're so upset and angry and sad and have so many conflicting feelings. And so we see someone suffering that we love and we want to help, but often that worry can cross over to consuming obsession. If nothing changes, the illness, whatever it is, continues to grow. And so our intention, is always we want to help. We want to avoid any conflict and we do want to control. And that's that dynamic that happens in that codependence. We're watching someone often becoming less, seeming to be less able to handle life. And so we start taking up the slack and we want to control everything. And we often, think that we're softening the blows for a loved one. We're giving them a chance to get back on their feet. I think of in my marriage when my husband was really struggling with his alcoholism. I took over all of the caretaking of my son. I took care of everything in the home. I paid the bills. And I didn't realize I was actually giving him more opportunity to give away his responsibility and focus on his addiction. And so often we support people in ways that remove the natural consequences. And so it's that learning about, okay, I need to ground myself and think about my intentions are good. But and in the short term it may work, but in the long term, when this dynamic continues, both parties sink into dysfunction. And so I know for me, I often felt guilt. I didn't like feeling guilt. I didn't like feelings. So it was easier to say yes. But I often say yes in many different, um, not very supportive ways. And so often what we share with families too is that it's taking a look back at our own family of origin. Again, it's that systemic way of looking at families. It's not a blaming the family unit. It's looking at, no family is perfect. And what did I learn? What were my core values? And sometimes we learn ways of survival in our family, depending on what's going on. And so we may have been taught that feelings aren't safe, that we're not okay, that we don't see what's going on, we can't comment on it. And so, we start to help family members read about that, learn about that, support going to different groups about it. Because, of course, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And again, it's when we enable other people, we do for them what they can do for themselves, or we get help from more, or we can get help from others. We unwittingly we're encouraging the dysfunctional behavior. Somehow we're giving permission for that to continue. So one of the things that we talk about with family members is every day, every day for all of us, we're faced with either accepting or rejecting reality of that particular day or the circumstances. And our present circumstances include who we are, where we live, who we live with or without, where we work, how much money we have, what our responsibilities we are. Some days are a breeze, work is going well, and relationships are great, and everything's going well. But there, of course, in life, we don't have control over when the car breaks down or when a job is lost, when a parent dies, when a child dies. Like, we don't have control. Something always happens, problems arise. And often it's about we looking back at my core values. What did I learn about coping? What did I learn about when things happened in our family? And many things happened in our family, people dying, people, marriages breaking up, people having problems. That's life. But it's how we learn how to cope. And so Virginia Satir talks about the problem's not the problem. It's the way we cope that's the problem. And so it's really difficult for me to change if I can't take a look back. And, sometimes there's situations to accept. And I remember the counseling that I was going to when my son was struggling in his with his addiction and mental health. And the counselor I was seeing is the one that asked me to come to the family program at Edgewood. I wasn't working here then. And we talked a lot about, I had a story in my head about the way I wanted my family to be. I had this picture of this, close family. I would look at other families and think that they seem to have it all together. And really, the difficult challenge was learning acceptance. It's actually looking at what's happening. Okay, my son has an addiction, and I'm really affected by that addiction. My husband struggles with his alcoholism, and I struggle with that. And that's what my life is. And my life is also other good things, because often we become so problem saturated. So we talk to families about, we're uncomfortable and we stay and deny and resist the problem. For some families, we or couples or individuals, uh, it's that mirror image of our family members struggle with their own acceptance, and so do we. And we talk a lot about how our struggles are a mirror image of what our loved ones are. We're just obsessed with them. And when we have a situation to accept, we can deny it. We can keep doing what we're doing. We can continue that dance of codependency. And we talk to people about how it's an uncomfortable situation, but it's what we know. It's like that slipper that, has a nail coming out from the sole, but we love our old slippers. But at some point, and it's different for different families, you know, we it's that denial is so huge. We resist the problem. We want things to go back the way that they were. And the acceptance piece is about acknowledging and accepting our circumstances, including ourselves and the people in our lives as we and they are. And we talk to family members that this is not something that we can do alone. When we have a family member that is so unwell, we also mirror that unwellness. And so for us to do some changing, it's coming to terms with what is. And then that can free us up to start making some changes. And often that's a turning point for change. I remember when I came to the family program in 2008, I was really angry. And when I was in that group and the two counselors were running the program, I thought they didn't get it. They didn't understand that my situation was much worse than anybody else's, that we were suffering in our family much more than anyone. And I had come to the family program with a full intention that these counselors were going to tell me how to get my family members well, because I had tried everything and, begged and pleaded and over again, like most families do. We over and over again try to change the situation. We think we rescue our loved ones. We're hoping that will be the time they'll change. And often, over time, we realize as family members that uh, we are being lied to, we're being manipulated. Uh, and it's because our family members are not well. And we um, struggle to accept that reality. And I struggled to accept it. And we talked to lots of families who struggle. It's really hard to think, like, all this work that I've done, getting you to treatment, now I want to rest. And you telling me I need to do some work too. But that is the turning point for families. One of the counselors in the family program, when I came so many years ago, said it just takes one person in the family to create change. There's no guarantee that if I change, that my family members will, but it certainly provides a better opportunity. We know the research talks about the more that the family is knowledgeable and looking at their own recovery, it has a ripple effect on their loved ones. And we it's that whole thing from Al-Anon or other 12-step programs or other programs that are out there, Dharma recovery. It's the whole idea of it's progress, not perfection. And so Dr. Robert Weiss talks about family members. Should stay close to their loved ones who are struggling. And they also need to keep that at a distance because family members have as much work to do. We have work to accept the current reality. And then once we accept that, once we surrender to that, then change can happen. And it's different, just like it is for our loved ones who struggle with mental health, trauma, or addiction. Um, some come to that conclusion earlier or not. It's the same for us, for us as family members, that we have as much work to do um, to learn to accept what really is happening. So the next thing that we talk about with family members, of course, is boundaries. And, we talk to family members about how many times have you tried to help your loved one when they're engaged in their illness and it backfires? And boundaries can be defined as something that indicates a border, an edge, or a limit. It preserves the integrity of what is inside and what is outside. Boundaries are about taking care of us. And if I'm setting a boundary with a loved one, it's because I want to continue the relationship, not to end it. And for many family members who've been engaging in saying yes when they mean no, where they've been putting other people's feelings and their lives ahead of their own, and have so much fear about what if I do some changing? How can I say no? Because that fear is always there, particularly in the beginning. And so is again, we encourage families to join a support group, to be around other people that are on a similar life passage, to engage in some counseling, to join webinars, to take different programs, to do reading, because it's about learning about who we are. We can't set a boundary. We talk to family members about we cannot set a boundary as well if we don't know who we are, if we don't know our values, if we don't know what we stand for. And so a lot of the work we do is talking about that inner building of resilience, that really getting to know who you are as a parent, as a husband, as a wife, as an adult child. It's really getting to know who we are and taking that spotlight off the other person. And that's a lot of work. And so that's why, again, we emphasize with family members, you need to get help to do that. You expect your family member to connect with whatever support they have. You're hoping that they're following a program. And so we can't ask of others what we're not prepared to do ourselves. And without healthy boundaries, we're a doormat to whatever's happening for our family member. And again, we talk about, we spend a lot of time in the webinar, we spend a lot of time on the phone. We talk a lot about, the hula hoop. My hula hoop is my boundary. I'm the one who gets to decide who comes in and who stays out. That boundaries are not walls. That boundaries can change. But when we're not used to setting boundaries and we're scared, and maybe we never learned how to set them, then it becomes, we talk about it's a wonderful journey, because once we start to know who we are, then we can start to take power back in our own lives. The boundary isn't about telling someone this is what you need to do. It's about boundaries are to keep me safe. So it's me being clear about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept. And so when we have loved ones who are in active addiction, or they're diagnosed with a concurrent disorder, mental health and addiction, trauma, we really can set boundaries to limit the impact of the behavior. And I remember with my son, who struggled with not only drug addiction and alcoholism, but he also, had a number of mental health issues. And I had difficulty. I could set them, or I felt I could set the boundaries around the addiction, but I was so scared of his mental health that it was difficult. And so, again, knowledge is power. Knowledge can help family members have hope. It can give many different ideas of how to set a boundary. And again, this is where the support group is crucial for family members because it's going to be different work for lots of families that they haven't done before, and it takes practice. And so effective boundaries can assert the needs of or rights of families so that we can feel more secure and respected. And often, as family members, we hear, wives and husbands and adult children, parents of adults with difficulties, that they've lost that sense of feeling respected. They have allowed themselves to be treated in ways that they, their moral compass has starts to sink. And so learning about who I am and learning about boundaries, it, you know, it, that, and it still is. I'm going to still learn about boundaries the rest of my life, how to set them at work with family members, in the world. Boundaries are part of everyday life. Many of us, we haven't learned them, or because we've been in this dysfunctional relationship, we've stopped implementing them because we're so worried or so scared. And so again, we have the needs and rights, when we talk to family members we have, that's one of the topics is boundaries, and that we have rights as a family member. And so we talk about the advantages of setting boundaries. I know for myself early on in my recovery as someone who is a people pleaser or codependent, that's how addiction affects me. That's my response to it. That we invite the other person to be more responsible for their behavior. So we start taking back, we stop, look at different ways to stop enabling. They model a healthier and safer way of relating between people. Uh, Often, people in addiction or people who are struggling with their mental health, their trauma, or all of those, um, they often can look like they're taking advantage of those close to them to get their needs met. And that starts that dynamic, that pattern. And often our family members their lives are in chaos because of what they're doing. We see many people come into treatment here, and I hear family members talk about this in other settings, that, our family members have lost a structure to their lives by the time they get to treatment. That and this is why we feel like we have to jump in, because bills aren't paid, or work is neglected, the kids aren't being looked after, sleeping habits are abandoned, eating habits. So we watch our family member struggle with any kind of self-care, and those of us closest to watching that are most impacted. And one of the things that we're really impacted with is the moods, the erratic mood swings. And so setting boundaries with someone that we love is often a necessary step to protect us from the chaos, from being manipulated, and from being used. And we think we're helping. Family members think they're helping by, okay, well, when you finish treatment, then we'll get you a place to stay and buy you a car. And, you know, we, it's about family members learning how to take care of themselves, learning the lane that they go in, and to start setting boundaries to allow their family members to start taking some responsibility. And so boundaries are necessary, and they preserve our self-worth, they preserve our self-respect and our sanity. I know I talk to lots of families that feel like they're going crazy. Uh, and certainly I can identify with that. Um, and When we start to build that resilience in ourselves and we start to set appropriate boundaries, it's about this is what I can remove myself from. This is what I and so we talk a lot about that in the webinar and we talk a lot about that with families are start small, start learning about, where are some of your yeses? Are you aware of when you say yes? Is that what you really want to say? Or do you want to say no? And if I'm constantly breaking or moving my own boundaries, it's unlikely that you're going to respect mine or yours. And so defining, setting, and keeping a boundary, it often needs resetting, modifying, and the process is usually helped if the family members support each other and have the support of professionals. And that's, again, we talk so much about you can't do this alone. It's a, there's been a pattern that's developed for some people a short time, for others a long time. And it's, mental health and addiction and trauma. Uh, it really family members all develop patterns that have to be reset. And so it's often learning about, okay, I can set boundaries to protect me. I'm not telling you what to do, but I can help. And I need help to talk that over with other people who know. So the point, of course, we talk so much about family with family members, um, that you can't change someone else. And but what we can change is our response to a situation. And this change may in turn invite a change from that other person. It's such a, it seems so simple. And yet it takes so much work, um, and practice. And I think for myself, I wanted that immediate gratification. I wanted to learn right now what boundaries were. I want to learn right now. And it's about practice. There's nothing easy about change, but it's also coming to that acceptance of, for many family members, whether it's their core beliefs that are influencing what they're believing, or it's a situation that they're in, but it's that belief that I can change you. And it's a very common belief. I think it's pervasive in our society. I can change you. But what we share with families is that we really can't change anyone. While your loved one is learning about themselves and what's their part and what isn't, it's the same for family members that, um, we constantly wanted to change the situation because it was unlivable. But when we take a step back and we get knowledge and we get support, that then we can start changing our responsibility, our responses, because that's all we have control over. We don't have control over so many things in life, but we have control over what we learn and how we respond. So, of course, the whole support. Um, the woman who was a counselor in the family program when I came talked about, it's if you're tired of waiting for your loved one to change, lead the way. And so we really encourage family members to join support groups. It could be Al Anon, NAR Anon, Family and Friends Smart Recovery. It's a group of people that have similar shared experiences that are working on their own lives. They're looking at, um, their own values, becoming the best that they can be. And when family members go to support groups, they have a space that they can share their worries, their concerns. They can also share their successes. And again, family members often want their loved ones to have a plan when they come out. They want them to be able to be connecting with other people. And we often in the beginning fail to see that that's about us. So our work is often is, there's many families that are on their route to recovery. And then there's the families that are just beginning and all in between. And this disease for us as family members creates denial. It creates so many blocks to our own recovery. And so when we join different groups, then we're able to hear messages from other people. We're able to learn about their coping in a situation. We're able to be listened to, because by the time our family member comes to treatment, we there's a good chance that for family members they haven't been heard. And so we really recommend, to family members about seek your own support. This is your side of the street. You've been impacted incredibly by the situation in your family, and your healing is your own healing. We can't put the healing on the backs of our loved ones. We have to do our own healing. And often that's the view with family members, and I understand it because I felt the same way, is, I just want my family member to get better. They have a lot of work to do. And, I want them to, do this, that, and the other thing, and then I'm going to be okay. And how come they aren't, telling me how sorry they are? Well, it's about the more knowledge we have and the connection that we have, we're going to learn about how it affects other people. The world opens up. We start to see we're not alone. And the isolation piece, of course, is so big when someone is suffering from mental health, trauma, addiction of any kind. Isolation is the enemy. And so we talk to, patients across the country about getting connected with others that are on this journey. It's exactly the same for family members. Um, and our rooms, of different support groups should be filled with people. But our loved one goes to treatment and we're left to handle things. And so that's why, we believe the family program is so key, to be able to support people in their thinking, to show them that there's other ways, and to seek out that connection. Counseling and therapy, we feel, is so crucial. We really encourage family members to seek that out, whether it's systems, someone who knows Virginia Satir and systems, someone who works on cognitive, therapy, works on, different ways. But it's important for us to have someone who sees us, listens to us, and challenges us. It's taking us now the spotlight off our loved ones and putting it on ourselves. I remember a support group I was going to, with when my son was in active addiction and through his recovery. And, I just, it was interesting in our group, when new people would come in, they talk all about their loved one. But over time, you'd see the change start to happen where, how was your week? Wouldn't be, oh, my loved one. It would be, oh, this is my week. So it's about learning to connect with other people who can give us feedback, who we can give feedback to, that really opens up our world. Because for us, isolation is really deadly too. So those are some of the groups that we talk about. Um, so this next part is going to look at self-care. Um, and often with family members, we sometimes we ask family members, like, what are you going to do for yourself tonight, if they've had a phone call from their loved one that hasn't gone well. And lots of people say, I don't know. I don't know what self-care is. And there, of course, self-care for a lot of us, it's going to the spa, getting a massage, eating a good meal. And so those are all self-care. But when family members have been putting other needs first, this implementing this practice can be really uncomfortable. And we hear from family members talk about, I don't have time to do that, particularly when their family members in treatment. And we try to gently just challenge that. It's, you know, you, this whole idea of, when we are in a relationship with someone really struggling, then we're on that roller coaster before we've um, started any of our recovery. Uh, We think that we're laden with there's so much anxiety. There's when we're going up and down that roller coaster, merry-go-round, or whatever you want to call it, when we get that call from our loved one, or maybe our loved one calls from treatment saying, "I hate it here. This is horrible." Uh, for family members, it's that stress. It's being hyper vigilant day in and day out over long periods of time, that we talk to family members, your body, your emotions, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, but your body uh, it takes a toll. We can get high blood pressure, heart disease, uh, immune diseases, and so we have just often shut off any of that. And so we really encourage, and that's part of our webinar, is we do talk about self-care. And self-care, can be going to a recovery group. It can be going for counseling. It can be, I need to get out and do some things for myself. And many of you probably are familiar with the analogy of, when you get on a plane and the steward, the stewardess or steward tell you that, this is something that um, is really important uh, for you to make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself, because you can't help anybody else until you do that. And so we really talk to family members that when you take care of yourself, that's when you're able to take care of others. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And one of the authors that we talk about with family members is Candace Platter, who is a counselor in Vancouver. Many of you may be familiar with her. And in her book, she talks about the 4 elements of self-care. And so it's anything that has to do with our bodies. And again, it's about our physical health is so challenged when we are over-focused, obsessing about our loved one. And often this is the first thing that we let go of. And so it's coming back to, um, I need to have healthy eating, regular exercise, sleep well, see the doctor. And we talk, Deb does this presentation at the end of our webinar, the last presentation, because we often, we lose our sense of self, but we also just ignore our body. And our bodies, as we know, tell us when things are not okay. We do get high blood pressure, different things happen. So we talk to family members, it's critical. Daily, something daily. Just take a baby step. Don't, think you're going to run a marathon right away. It's about joining a gym or beginning running or going for a walk. It's about moving the body, and it helps, of course, with our own mental health too, that we're moving. The body needs to move. And then often that physical part, we do it with other people. So there's that connection piece as well. Emotional, looking after ourselves in an emotional way is often a daunting task because we haven't done it. So we talk to family members about writing down your thoughts, looking at journaling, learning about mindfulness, learning about meditation, learning about self-compassion. And so sometimes in 12-step programs, there's an acronym that says hungry, angry, lonely, tired. We may not always know what's contributing to our emotional wearing, but when we start focusing on it, when we start getting emotionally grounded, we use the tools of mindfulness, we use the tools of meditation, we start grounding, then we can start looking at ways, like a gratitude list, focusing on what is well, what is going well, rather than being problem saturated. And of course, it's important to have healthy and active mental abilities. Um, and so it's about us engaging in our own intellectual well-being. We've been so focused on other people for so long. It's about, stimulating our own mental juices. And so it's, volunteering, engaging, reading, having some life of our own. And of course, spirituality, we know it means different things to different people. It's really that part that's a seat of emotions. We often talk about spirituality is different for different people. It might be religious for some, for others it might be yoga, but it's something in a daily practice that helps identify who we are. It guides us in knowing a deeper essence of who we are. So it's finding something that works for us, because often we're emotionally done. So these are some of the family programs. We do the family education webinar about every 5 weeks. Again, it's something that all families can join, multiple family members, and Families Connect is something that we do every Wednesday from 3 to 4 Pacific time on Zoom, where we present a topic and then family members can interact with one another. And that is the end of my presentation. And now it's questions. So I can't hear you, Jonathan.
Well, they already beat me to it because I was asking everyone to share. A huge round of applause for Merlene in the chat. That was a fantastic webinar. Thank you so much. We do have a couple questions. If you, because we have a couple minutes. Are you ready, Merlene?
I'm ready. Sorry I took so long.
No. I think it was fantastic and really, really informative. And I have never seen so many clapping hand animations at the bottom of the screen. So well done.
Oh, wow.
So for anyone who has any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We do have a few minutes. If not, we will be sharing a link to our family program as well, or you can send us an email to learn more and ask any questions you might have. So this first question is from Brenda, who asks if you can give an example of specific boundaries that families can set.
Oh, yeah. So, one of the boundaries that we talk about is that, so an example is that, a mother has her daughter come back to live with her after treatment, and they set up some guidelines around, curfews, that sort of thing. And this is, we hear this a lot. And so, before the mother and the daughter have sat down together, they talked about some guidelines. The mother's talked about these are her boundaries, that she works in the mornings early, and so she needs to have her rest, and so she wants her daughter home by 11 every night. That she, that's one of her boundaries. And for a time, it all goes well. And then, her daughter stops coming home early enough. Like she starts coming home maybe at 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning, or maybe doesn't come home at all. And so in the boundaries that the mother has set that, if this boundary is crossed, this is what I'm going to do. The door will be locked, and you won't be able to come in if you're not here by 11, because I do need my rest, and my phone will be turned off. And so it's about the mother saying, I need my rest. I can't control what you're doing, but I can control you, when you come and go. And the doors will be locked at 11 and you won't be getting in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Merlene, and thank you for the question. I just want to say thank you. We're just coming close to 1. I just want to say a huge thank you again to Merlene and to all of you for participating in today's webinar. We will be sending out an email in the next week with some slides with the CEU credits. And just a huge thank you again for coming out today. Have a fantastic Tuesday, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.